I'm Whitney.
I'm Mindy.
And I'm Deb.
We're three best friends who love nerdy things.
Well, some people think we're nerdy, but we think we're pretty awesome.
This is Our Nerdiest Thing.
Hello, fellow nerds, and welcome to Our Nerdiest Thing. Today, we are discussing Crescent City 2, House of Sky and Breath by Sarah J. Maas. We will be discussing Part 2, The Abyss, chapters 25 through 47. Please keep in mind that this podcast is spoiler-heavy across all of Sarah J. Maas's series, except for Crescent City 3, which we will be discussing in just a few weeks. A special shout-out to Reviews from a Bookworm for her amazing summaries for both Crescent City 1 and Crescent City 2. Please check out her summaries if you have not already, especially if you don't have time to reread these ginormous books. That's it.
We're going to give you tons of time to read Crescent City 3, though.
Oh,
so
yeah.
Don't fret
We
about
got 10 whole episodes. Before we get into it, Deb, will you please describe to us in great detail our nerdiest cocktail?
I'm like, what are you about to ask me to do? So tonight's drink is named the Lightning Storm.
Ooh.
It's themed after sex in an underwater biodome, and this drink pairs well with over-the-top possessive mates, unleashed anger and sexual tension, and extravagant merging of powers.
Yes.
And it may cause you to spontaneously apparate into a different room.
Yeah.
I've never had sex that good, and I've had some pretty good sex.
We're all missing out.
It's never made me teleport before. I will say, Mindy, this recipe is delicious. It's got like chili liqueur in it, but
so
for
good.
those of you that don't like hot food, it's not hot.
No,
it's like
it's
smoky.
not.
It's really, really tasty. So the whole recipe will be listed on
very good.
ournerdiestthing.com
Good.
and at Our Nerdiest Thing on Instagram. We'll see you there.
Thank you so much, Deborah.
Why do you always thank me with such fervor? And I don't know if it's because I've stopped talking or because I've had enough to drink.
I'll never tell.
I don't care. So it works out perfectly.
Mindy, will you please share with us our nerdiest vocabulary?
Yeah, so hold on your butts again.
Oh, man.
Why do you always make me touch my own butt?
That's the kind of girl we are.
Yeah. So get ready for some connections, because this is actually my deep dive as well.
Connections.
So there are two deities in these books that we hear these characters invoke in some way. Usually it's like a prayer or a curse. So one is Urd. They always are like, thank Urd, blah, blah, blah. And in Norse mythology, which much of these books are based on, Urd is actually one of the three fates.
Ooh.
And that was the one that represents the past. And I think it was me that did a deep dive on the fates during season 2 of the podcast.
I think so.
Rewind and go listen to that if you want the full fates story.
Deep dive.
Can you imagine being in middle school, though, and your name being Urd? That poor guy.
It's actually a girl.
Oh, well, is she nice? Because that name could really piss someone off.
Well, I don't know, but...
Well, is she nice in mythology?
Well, I mean, she's one of the fates, so they weave like time for you. So she's
Nobody really loves not having control of their fate.
I think they're kind of witchy. Like they're like they're crones. Or one of them is
witchy woman.
I think that the fates are kind of like revered, but not really liked.
Yeah.
Because they let bad stuff happen.
Yeah.
You know?
Mm-hmm.
I think.
I don't know, something
That's
like
how
that.
Scarlet St. Clair goes.
Thanks, SSC.
So in English translations, though, the Norse root for Urd is actually spelled W-Y-R-D.
Ooh.
Interesting.
So word or weird, because sometimes they're called the Weird Sisters, the fates are. So,
But in
yeah.
the Throne of Glass books, it's always Wordstone, right?
Yes.
Okay, just making sure we're all saying it the same way, because it's not how it always happens.
Yeah. Well, yeah. So Urd and word, those rhyme. So in Norse mythology, again, the fates actually weave what they call a web of word, which then was translated into like a rune or a symbol that embodies the concept of interconnectedness between the past, present, and future. So what the fates represent. So in my mind, I went to word gates as a way to time travel. So there's that.
Interesting.
Next, we move on to Cthona, which we
yeah.
hear them invoke quite often. And it comes from the Greek word for earth or soil. And more specifically, the adjective chthonic means in, under, or beneath the earth.
Oh.
So it's a word that describes anything that pertains to the underworld.
I don't think I've ever heard that word.
So
Chthonic.
So some recognizable chthonic gods in Greek mythology are Hades, Persephone, and Demeter.
Nice.
Because they're all part
Again,
of the underworld.
Scarlet St. Clair.
Yeah. I was going to say, I
Go
know who
read
they
those
are.
So here comes a connection. Another set of chthonic gods
It's
are
not
called...
Scarlet St. Clair. That's not
Scarlet St. Clair. They're called the Erinyes. And the Erinyes are also known as the Eumenides and more commonly known in English as the Furies.
Ooh.
Wow.
So the Furies are the chthonic goddesses of vengeance. And their origin is kind of different depending on which account you believe. So some accounts say that the Titan Cronus, this gets a little graphic.
Oh.
So Titan Cronus castrated his father,
Oh.
who happened to be Uranus,
Have that name in middle school.
right? Threw his genitalia into the sea, and
Oh,
the
no.
Furies came from the drops of blood that fell on Earth.
Ew.
So the Furies are genitalia blood from his anus?
In
pee-pee blood.
some accounts, yes.
Well, no wonder no one likes them.
That's what my mom
right?
would say is dingle dangle.
You're going to say it's dingleberry.
Oh my gosh.
She's not going to listen to this. It's fine.
So some accounts do say that that's the graphic image that they portray. Other literature says they are the daughters of Hades and
I
Persephone.
like that better.
I like that better too. We'll go with that one.
Although the fates in Scarlet St. Clair's world are not their kids, and they also kind of fuck stuff up sometimes.
But it would be the Furies that are Hades.
The Furies.
Okay,
Yeah,
gotcha,
the
gotcha.
Furies.
So there are still other accounts that say they are the daughters of Nyx, also called Night. Now, here's my unhinged theory.
Wait, hold
time.
on. Okay, go, and then I have something to say, because I can see Whitney's mind
So
doing it too.
Crescent City and Akatar would definitely have to be on different timelines for this, but could Fury be a descendant of Nyx or related in some way to that family?
That's awesome. Here's the thing. We know that there are parallel universes
Yes.
in the Maas universe. There's still not anything that says that Akatar and Crescent City are technically on the same timeline.
He's not going to say
Let's
anything.
talk about it, because I want to know what you're... We can't do it now because we said no spoilers about book 3, but I want to talk to you more closely.
Well, and I have a
about that.
feeling this is going to come up later anyways.
Yeah, it
But
will.
so the other...
Why would you think that?
So here's where
That's too close of a thing, though.
I know. Here's where my unhinged theory comes from. So the Erinyes live in or frequent the underworld. They are said to be more ancient than any of the Olympic deities and are tasked with hearing complaints of crimes and then punishing the culprits of said crimes by tormenting them relentlessly. So that kind of, I mean, with what we know so far of Fury, that kind of goes along with her personality and what we think she sort of
Yeah.
does.
I mean, everybody's afraid of her.
Yeah.
Really.
And then this one, I mean, this is the clincher for me. They are frequently described as wearing black and commonly associated with night and darkness.
Ooh.
Interesting.
I don't know. I just feel like there's something there.
It's
Maybe.
the name Nyx is so uncommon,
Yeah.
right? Like
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
a really good connection, Mindy. I like that.
Good job, Mindy.
So
Well, good.
I'm gonna do to you what Whitney does to me. Thank you so much, Mindy. That was like really great.
It was like amazing. Great
Are you
job.
done?
Great job.
Golf claps all around.
well, thank you. You don't see me bowing, but I know.
I'm bowing in my heart.
She only does that when we get off air. You know what I'm saying?
That's lots of stuff to think about.
It is.
I feel like I need to go
I feel
back
like
through.
Whitney thinks you and I are wrong though, because she's like, "That's interesting."
I'm just not gonna. I mean, I'm not gonna say anything.
Well, I do
do
want
wanna
to
have-
read the same book as she has.
Right.
I haven't read it.
I do want to have a conversation tomorrow.
Okay.
Will you call me
Maybe
in the afternoon, please? Not in the morning when I'm stressed out.
if I remember. I'm supposed to go to a wedding.
You're going to be
tomorrow.
thinking about this shit all day tomorrow. Shut up.
I know. I'm supposed to go to a wedding though. I don't know. We'll see. if I
That
feel
sounds
like-
boring.
Yeah, that does sound.
That brings us to our nerdy and dirty recap.
Oh, witness.
How long is it this week?
It's not as long as last week's,
Okay.
but I struggled a lot, I feel like.
I'm going to have the producer put in a new thing that when you start to do the nerdy and dirty recap, it's going to go, get down on it. Get down on it.
Yes, absolutely. 100%.
Perfect.
For the record, we only have one more episode of you doing it, right? And then we're going back to our 60-second one.
Well, I was going to say, not necessarily only one more, because I could get picked to do it
True.
again.
Right.
But not this way.
But you're not allowed to have
the time
8 pages of notes that you look up.
Yeah. Well, it'll be shorter sections when we do Crescent City 3.
Here's the thing.
You know.
We need this. So I'm so happy
No
that
kidding.
you do it. And thank you so much. Because even though we're all rereading it, you still say stuff where I'm like, that happened? Yeah. So please, Whitney, give it to us dirty.
Well, I really struggled with this. I felt like it was very tough to come up with this recap because I felt equally that a lot happened, but also not very much happened, I felt like, which I realized that doesn't make any sense, but that's just how I felt. So I've tried to organize everything into different categories, and we're just going to hope for the best. So I'm going to kind of be jumping around all over the place, but trying to focus on like this one character and their story through this section, if that makes sense.
Okay.
So first I want to talk about Rune. In this section,
Me too.
Rune really is the guide for us as the reader to some definitive answers about Ophion and Sofie. So I want to track that process. So Rune is mind speaking with Agent Daybright, and this leads to intel about some new mech suits that the Asteri are having shipped. Ophion steals the mech suit prototype, although I will say I was not clear if they stole a mech suit, the prototype, or if there were multiple. I was confused by that, which is not super important, I guess, but
So I
was
felt
confused.
like there were multiples on that. Yeah.
I think so too.
Yeah.
I was just confused by that scene a little bit, but they steal mech suits. Ophion has the prototype. Cormac brings the whole gang to the island where they have brought these stolen mech suits to see what these suits can do. Hunt finds that the mech suits, basically the Asteri engineers have figured out a way to use Gorsian stone to absorb power rather than just block power. So these suits can essentially absorb first light, absorb power through the ground, and basically never run out of ammo and never run out of power. They would be unstoppable with a veneer pilot inside. Hunt destroys this, which again, did he destroy just the one suit or all of them? I was confused about that. I'm a little unclear.
Confusing.
It felt kind of vague. I was a little unclear about that, but he destroys at least one because he wants to protect, humans and all these people from getting killed by these like powered up, insane suits. So when he does this, that sends Pippa, the Ophion psycho, after our whole crew of favorites. In the meantime, someone has betrayed Ophion and spilled this intel that they have these mech suits at this specific location to the Hind because she is there trying to catch rebels. So we have Rune, Therian, Bryce, Hunt, and Cormac, all caught in the ocean, in the water by the Hind, who doesn't actually do anything to them, doesn't take them, doesn't arrest them, doesn't shoot them, is just like, I see you guys. And then like, that's it, basically. So they are actually all rescued from the Hind by a boat from the Ocean Queen herself. While on the Depth Charger, which is a super secret boat that can hide from the Hind and her boats and Dreadwolves, they find that sadly Sofie did in fact drown. The Ocean Queen.
Okay, I have to say I was so sad.
I know.
I'd forgotten that.
I feel bad for
Sorry,
Cormac.
I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, it's okay. The Ocean Queen went and had her body retrieved, which is why the body was missing and why the chains were unlocked when Therian went to go look for her. And poor Cormac has to finally accept the reality that the woman he loves is gone forever. We still don't know where Emil is, and we don't know what the fallout is going to be from the Hind seeing our crew mixed up with this Ophion. We don't know what's going to happen with that. That'll be in the next section. So on to Baxian. Baxian was a partner of the Hind in the Triari with Sandriel when Hunt was owned by Sandriel. And we talked last time about how he is kind of showing these signs of like, you don't actually know me. You know, I was trying to survive just like you. You don't know me. You don't know my life.
You don't know my life.
Yeah, you don't know my business. So Baxian is actually there at the island with the Hind looking for these rebels, but he actually warns Hunt and the rest of the crew that the Hind is there and is basically like, y'all need to get out of here right now to avoid her. So he's trying to help them, which is curious and notable. Baxian also came to help Hunt at Bryce's apartment when Sabine shows up and tries to basically like beat her up because she's mad about Ethan.
And she called her a cunt, which
Yeah,
I want to say
that was
now
rough.
it's not relative
Yeah.
because we know cunty is a nice word. Yeah. You need to listen.
She should have said, thank you.
Oh,
Thank
thank
you
you. I
so
am
much.
quite cunty.
Yeah, I've been working on my cuntiness. I appreciate that. So when Baxian shows up, he and Sabine have this really weird, very tense exchange, and then Sabine basically runs away. So we find out also, speaking of Sabine slept with Mordock, who is second in command basically to the Hind and the worst in general. And he is Danica's father and a bloodhound, just like Danica. He's in town with the Hind, and that just can't be good. So remember, the Hind is there because of Ephraim, the new archangel governor of somewhere else, who was in I can't remember. He's in town in Crescent City to mate with Celestina. They know each other. They've been friends for a long time. They're the two new governors, but the Asteri are forcing them to have sex and make an archangel baby, which is sexual assault. So let's just throw that out there. So that's gross, but that's why they're all there in the first place. Okay, so I'm going to pivot a little bit and talk about Ethan. So Sabine kicked Ethan out of the wolf den in part 1 because he defended Bryce. So in this section, Bryce actually tells the Prime about Ethan being kicked out by Sabine, and the Prime offers to make Ethan an alpha of his own pack.
Yeah.
That's a really big deal. It's a very big honor, and Ethan's just going to have to think about it, which I'm like, just immediately say yes, Ethan. Like, but I get he's thinking about, I would have to eventually answer to Sabine when the Prime dies. She's going to become the Prime, which I get that. So in the meantime, while he's thinking about this, he is helping Therian look for Emil and living with Rune and the frat pack boys. Ethan ends up rescuing 3 fire sprites and a freaking dragon from captivity at the astronomer's house, which is basically a super creepy dude who owns mystics, essentially slaves.
Did you picture the Minority Report?
It's very Minority Report.
Is that what you had next?
That's literally the
It's
next
like literally
sentence,
how
yeah.
I picture them.
Me too.
They're in these liquid bowls, and they have all this stuff hooked up to them, and they're essentially on kind of like life support in Minority Report, which is a really good movie. You should go watch it.
It is, yeah.
Have you seen it, Mindy?
I have not.
Okay, we're watching
I
it.
don't
That's
know
a
why
good
you
one.
even asked me that.
Because I wanted an excuse to watch it with you.
Yeah, it's really good. It is very Minority Report. The mystics are floating in tubs and seeing into the universe and like whatever else. Ethan discovers that one of these mystics being held captive by the astronomer is actually an alpha wolf. And so he is keeping that information tucked away for later, wants to do something about it, not really sure how he could help. So last but not least, let's talk about our favorite Fae Angel duo, Bryce and Hunt. We have
I thought you were going to say Rune's face and me.
We have 3 very big developments with Bryce and Hunt. So first of all, they discover during a fight with the Underking that Hunt can basically level up Bryce's power by shooting her with his lightning. So this comes in very handy during the fight with the Underking, but also when they destroy the Asteri mech suit. It's very much giving Rowan and Aelin from Throne of Glass, right? The Karanam, I don't know how Karanam.
Yeah.
Being, your power calls to each other and you help each other be more powerful.
Like calls to like.
Like calls to like. I love that so much. Not like calls to like, but the Rowan and Aelin vibes. So during this encounter with the Underking, we find out that the souls in the Bone Quarter either get consumed by the Underking himself or fed into the Dead Gate and turned into First Light or Second Light. So they find out that there's actually no peaceful afterlife after all. They get converted back into power. So that's horrifying to Bryce and Hunt and everyone. And that's going to come into play in the next section. The second big development is that Bryce and Hunt have a DTR talk. Define the relationship. And
I heard DTF.
No,
when you said that.
DTR.
They have that too later.
Yeah, they do that as well. They accept each other as mates. So mates mean something different for Fae than they do for angels, but Hunt is in it for the long haul because he just wants a forever with Bryce. And I just think that's really cute. I love that. So that leads into the third big development. They finally have sex. Sex. Good for you. I wrote, good for you, girl. They've given each other orgasms before, but
Did it really need to take this long?
apparently so. They've given each other orgasms before, but they have never had actual sexy time. So it's good. It's so good. They literally transport to a different room when they orgasm. Dang. I would also like to point out that Rune recognizes their mating bond and tells Bryce that Hunt is lethal as a mated male and that Bryce smells different. This sets us up for the final section of the book where our whole favorite crew is going to have to return to Crescent City, deal with the Hind, look for Emil, and oh yeah, don't forget, Rune is still engaged to Hypaxia and Bryce is still engaged to Cormac. So we'll have to deal with that too. We'll talk about that next time.
Mm-hmm.
That's a lot.
Yeah.
I know, but not as much as last week. So, yeah, let's get into more specifics.
Since you did all of that deep dive into what actually happened in the book, I want to know what your favorite moment is. It's like you really thought this through.
Well, declaring each other as mates.
That was mine too.
That's my favorite. Yeah, I just think it's really sweet. I also really like the fight in the bone quarter. They remind me a lot in this section of Rowan and Aelin, and I just really like that.
It's so funny. I wrote those exact two
Yeah.
scenes down, but maybe for a little bit of different reasons.
Well, what were your reasons, Mandy?
Just I love when Bryce and Hunt are talking about what they should call each other when they're talking about they basically are talking about being mates, because it goes from like lightheartedly joking about calling each other lover. When she says or he says ye old lover, I just about died.
That did make me laugh.
And
too.
then it goes to serious where they're talking about how mates means forever, and then to really just heartwarming where they're kind of proclaiming themselves as mates. And then speaking of mates, when they go to the bone quarter and she uses the star sword to combine with his lightning, I just love, first of all, they kick some doggy ass. And second of all, it's a dog that they kill.
Yeah, whatever. It's a demon.
Who has been over?
It's a demon dog.
Yeah.
It's Cerberus.
Anyways,
Yeah.
I just love that he tells her to light it up.
I know. I loved that
That was
too.
just a great moment.
I loved that too.
So I personally still really struggle with this mating bond scene. I have, even after reading like the third book, right? And Sarah J. Maas has said that they're mates. Okay. But we know this is a mass multiverse, and mates means something really big in the multiverse. And for me, like, it never clicks. Like, there is a point with Aelin and Rowan, and there is a point with Rhysand and Feyre where like it kind of like clicks into place. And I struggled with this scene so much because Bryce and Hunt are like, well, yeah, like, I guess we can call each other mates. And it felt not as big or as impactful as the other mating scenes in the other books.
I think when I look at it, it's because they don't know anything about, like, it's not part of, like with Rhysand and Feyre, that's part of Rhysand's world. Like they grow up talking about that and thinking about that, and Bryce is just kind of like whatever, and then like we still don't even really know what
struggle.
Hunt is.
That's the struggle, is that Bryce is continuously like, yeah, whatever, that sounds good. Hunt is all in.
I think she's all in. I think she's all in, but I think that like she was not brought up in a like 100% Fae hair. Like she is part Fae, but like that wasn't part of her world growing up. Like her mom didn't like tell her all the time, you're going to find your mate and blah, blah, blah. You know, like it wasn't like a big deal.
There was never, leading up to the scene for me, never a, oh my God, they can't live without each other moment. Like there are in the other books. I've never felt it. And I know there's an ongoing, like, are they mates? And here's the thing, SJM has said yes. So I'm going with that.
Yeah,
sure.
They definitely are.
Right. But I've always struggled with this scene.
Honestly, I think it's because they don't have sex in this scene. I really do.
So?
I think
And
in
that's
the
such
other,
a big part of the other two books.
yeah, especially Reese and Feyre. I mean, they have that whole mate conversation, and then immediately
Chapter 35.
Well, and if you think about like Reese and Feyre, and you think about Nesta and Cassian, their whole like mate bond clicking into place happens when they're having sex, and Bryce and Hunt don't do that here. They do it later, and when they do have sex later, Hunt, I think it's from Hunt's point of view when they're actually having sex. I can't remember, but I think it is from Hunt's point of view. But he talks about like he can feel her power in him and how it like lights him up. Like he has a whole description that to me very much feels like mate bond clicking. And in this conversation before they have, when they're just talking about it, I think that Bryce is very like, this is a really big deal. Like, do you realize for an angel it's not, but for me as a fae it is. This is a big deal.
You're kind of telling me the same thing I'm saying though, because she talks in detail about how it clicks in for Hunt, but she never talks about it clicking for Bryce, and that's what I want to see more of, because Bryce has been so like nonchalant about the whole thing and like let's wait to have sex, and like to your point, Feyre and Rhys-Anne like couldn't wait to have sex, right? Cassian and Nesta couldn't wait to have sex, and so like I struggle more with the lack of intimacy because like that tug's not there as much for them, where they can like still say no. Like I'm just telling you, I've struggled with like with this book. I will tell you, I was one of those before Crescent City 3 came out where I'm like, I don't think they're mates, and I still wonder if Bryce has a full fae mate out there that like she would reject, because Hunt could be her angel mate. And so like I don't know, it feels not the same.
Okay. So was that your least favorite?
No. I haven't even told you what my favorite thing was.
Oh,
yet.
Well, it's not the mating scene then.
No. My favorite scene was also when they're in the Bone Quarter, whenever Bryce and Hunt fight Cerberus. So I just named him that because the Hellhound of Hell has 3 heads, right?
Yeah.
So it says Hunt is equipped to handle raw energy and slams his hand into the brass plaque of the dead gate to give Bryce power. In the meantime, the dog's head has split into 3 heads and then into 3 dogs, which is really kind of terrifying, right? And much like you said, Mindy, I really love that Hunt says, "Light it up, Bryce," which happens to be my favorite quote of this section because it's my favorite quote of the end of book 1. And I think, again, going back to like knowing someone and maybe something clicking in, he knew what she needed to hear in that moment. Yeah. And I think it motivated her to keep going. So I think that scene's really powerful.
No, I like that.
And I felt like she was such a badass there. She needed Hunt's power, but like, did she? Like, I think she's a badass. She's great.
Well, she is, for sure. Yeah. What about least favorite moment?
Okay, so the thing about the mate is not my least favorite moment. I was just having conversation.
It was a good discourse, though.
Yeah, so there's 2 things. My less serious one is when Hunt goes down on Bryce after they're working out.
That's my favorite sexy scene.
Really? Yes. I know how bad you sweat when you work out.
Oh, excuse me.
You have told me.
No, that's true.
Would you?
That doesn't mean I want somebody to do it to me, but I did like reading it.
You wouldn't let Robbie go downtown after a workout,
like he would.
Right?
So he would be like, "Get in the shower, please."
For me, there's no fucking way. It's the same way, like in Outlander, when when Claire's like, "I've not showered in like a week," and he's like, "You gotta like put your nose down there and get used to it, like the horses do." And I'm like, "That is not sexy, Jamie Fraser." Like, it's the same thing.
Yeah.
And I'm like, so you guys went gallivanting around first, and then you came back and you worked out super duper hard, and you're talking about how sweaty you are, and then you're just gonna like go down on her in there,
and she's like, "I am gross," and he's like, "Shut up."
Right. And she was gross, I can promise you that. So my other least favorite moment is there's a lot of sexual assault in this section, and it's when Agent Daybright, who we know is Lydia, is being coerced / awakened for rough sex while she's on the mine bridge. And we know that this is Pollux, and we've already found out earlier that he enjoys rape. And so that part, I remember reading it and being able to start to figure out that it was Pollux, and how much that really bothered me, and how she just has to endure it over and over again. Yeah. And how strong that makes her, but also the amount of trauma that she goes through probably daily. Because even though she goes to him as quote unquote willing,
Yeah, she says.
Right.
Yeah.
He
Yeah.
still does things to hurt her on purpose.
Yes.
So I very much disliked that.
Yeah,
Obviously.
I didn't like that either.
Yeah.
He sucks.
That's a big downer.
He does suck.
What about you, Mindy?
For me, it was the way the mystics are treated. Like, just the way they're used and assumed that they enjoy what they're doing, like that they're fulfilling their purpose or whatever. And then their families are taken advantage of and like paid off for the use of them. And that's sort of how they're bribed into it. I mean, it's slavery. It's icky.
Yeah.
I don't know.
It
just left me with a pit in my stomach.
What's yours, Whitney?
Well, mine are not as serious as yours.
Well, the going down wasn't super serious, but he could have waited 5 minutes. I bet the gym had showers.
Probably.
Yeah.
Okay, so my least favorite moment is the whole drama with Juniper, but it's not because of drama with Juniper or Bryce like taking advantage of her position or whatever. It's that I just don't care.
That's a good point.
I agree.
I just don't
It came
care.
out of it seems extraneous.
Well, yeah, and I can't, I established last week that I don't remember this book. So maybe next section I'll be like, oh yeah, that was super important because of whatever. But I don't think it comes to play other than just like conflict with her friends. And I just am like, why is this in here? Why do we need to have this? Why can't she just have supportive friends that she's got good stuff going with? You know?
I wonder if it's supposed to show that Bryce is like all in again, right? Because she pretty much ignored everybody for like a year.
Maybe.
And then she uses her resources to help her Juniper get the lead ballet
Yeah.
spot. And so I wonder if it's supposed to show like character growth.
Maybe.
But I mean, to your point, Juniper is fine, but like, okay.
Yeah, I just don't care. So that bothered me. But again, that's not as deep as yours. So what about biggest revelation?
You touched on this, but mine was that the Underking feeds on the souls of the dead.
Mm-hmm.
He feeds off of them for centuries, and
Yeah.
then they're essentially reused for power. That's
Yeah.
called second light. There's no afterlife beyond that, and essentially everyone's been lied to.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a big part of where you start to realize that there is a lot going on in this world that nobody realizes. It's like
Right.
kind of a catalyst for all of the secrets that are about to start coming out.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. What about you, Mindy?
So mine are like these aha moments for me, sort of like connections that I'd missed the first time.
Yeah.
So knowing the big revelation, this makes it a little bit more obvious. But the first time I read it, I didn't make this connection. So when they're talking about the obelisks at the bone quarter, the way they're described like word gates.
Oh, yeah.
And obviously I totally missed that. And I hadn't actually, when I read this, I hadn't read Throne of Glass yet.
Yeah.
So that was a big like, oh, there's that connection. And then it occurred to me that the stone that the hind drops in the ocean is what summons the ship, because she did it with Sofie too. Like I think they want you to think it's like she's getting rid of some crystal or maybe like detonating something, but that was a big aha moment for me.
Yeah.
And then finally, when the commander like they're in the depth charger, is that what it's called?
Yeah.
And the commander talks about the pillars in the water. They used to be a highway from long, long ago. That's like I'm like Throne of Glass long ago, or Akatar long ago, Summer Court vibes. I don't know. Like all that little tidbits that I glossed over the first time I read it.
We still don't know, even after reading this book, where Throne of Glass fits in.
Yeah,
so I'm
I know.
excited. When's that gonna come up?
Dun, dun,
I just want
dun.
Aelin to just like fucking pop up somewhere.
I know. I do too.
Where she like walks in and she's like, "Hey, I'm Aelin.
Nice to meet me.
I have no powers, but
Well, I'm really excited about my biggest revelation. It's one of those things where I've like blown my own mind, and I'm afraid that you guys are going to be like, yeah, everybody knows that. But I was excited because I put this together. So I'm pretty sure the Underking is a Suriel.
oh, why?
So here's the Underking's description. He's described as being 10 feet tall, with rich black velvet robes draped to the ground, shadows following him where he goes. His face is like a desiccated corpse, half rotted, And he has a lipless mouth with brown teeth and milky, lidless eyes.
Oh.
And here's the description of the Suriel from ACOTAR, the first one. A face that looked like it had been crafted from dried, weather-worn bone, its skin either forgotten or discarded. A lipless mouth and 2 long teeth held by blackened gums, slitted holes for nostrils, and eyes that were nothing more than swirling pits of milky white.
Interesting.
Ooh.
I think he's a Suriel.
Is that why he likes to spill the tea?
I guess
About
so.
the afterlife?
But that brings so many questions to me from thinking about what we know about the Suriel, the only one that we know of from ACOTAR. Mm-hmm. If he is a Suriel, he's very different than the Suriel we see interacting with Feyre. You know what I mean? Like his demeanor and...
Well, it's almost like a Suriel that came into some power.
Right.
Yeah.
Like power corrupts.
Yeah.
Kind of deal. So yeah, I realized that, and because it was the lipless mouth, and I was like, hold up.
And the milky eyes.
And the milky eyes.
Well, I didn't remember that until I looked this up. It was the lipless mouth, and I was like, doesn't the Suriel have a lipless mouth? And so when I looked it up, I was like, oh shit.
Matt Schofield has the best drawing of the Suriel.
Yeah, she does.
Like.
Yeah, it's so good. But I'm really excited about that. I don't really know what it means. Maybe nothing.
Honestly, it's the robes that get me.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, could Bryce have just had like some robes instead of having to get like a coin? She's like, hey,
Yeah.
Underking, I've got some new robes for you.
Yeah.
And I mean, she didn't even have to kill a chicken like Feyre did.
And she only had to do that once,
I
the
know.
chicken. But I was really excited about that.
That's a good little connection. I
Yeah,
love it.
I
Or
like
big
that.
connection, I guess.
Thank you so much. I'm excited to try to make it have more meaning than it probably should. But as we continue to see the Underking, if we continue to see the Underking, I'm gonna go with it.
So speaking of going under, I want to know why going down on someone after they had gym time is your favorite spicy scene.
I think that it is the idea of, which we talked about this, I think, when we talked about spicy scenes in our Nerdiest Thing episode. I think it's the idea of, I want you so bad, I gotta have you right now, even though you're gross, even though we're kind of in a public place,
I'm like,
you know?
you could kiss till you get to the shower and then
But they've
wash
got
up.
all those people in their apartment.
No, I'm saying there's a shower at the gym.
Oh, I mean, I would
They live
assume
in that
they live in a fancy
fancy-ass
place.
high-rise.
Yeah.
There's
I would
a shower
assume
in the
there's
gym.
a shower down there, but he can't even wait for that. That's what I mean. You know what I
Couldn't
mean?
have just grabbed a gym towel at least and wiped it off
He did. I think he did after, didn't he?
after.
Before, like,
I'm
get
talking
that
about, like,
sucker wet and clean things
Clean
off.
her up first, and
Wipe
then,
off the swamp ass.
Yeah.
I think he was using it as lube. I mean, I'm just
Okay,
saying.
to any male listener that we have,
Don't.
spit is not a lube. It doesn't do anything. It doesn't lubricate. It just adds moisture, and there's a big difference.
Maybe Faye don't need that. Maybe Faye are just always moist.
That sounds like Faye always have a yeast infection.
Yeah. I do think though the why I like that scene is that idea of like, I have to have you right this second.
Sure.
Like I cannot
Like, I can't wait anymore.
Yeah.
For me, it's like the part in Outlander, though, where Bree finds Jamie and he's just taking a huge piss and he was holding his dirty penis and he goes and touches her face. And he's
I've never thought about that.
I've waited for you so long, and takes the hand he had just been holding his penis with and cups her cheek with it.
You're my wee bairn.
100%. To me, it's the same. I can't get past those little
That's so
details where I'm
funny.
like, oh, your piss hand is on her face.
I never thought about that.
Now you're going to go watch that
I'm not going to be able to watch that episode anymore without
It
going,
really
ew.
ruins a sweet moment. Like, same thing.
Oh man, that's funny.
Mindy, what was your favorite spicy scene?
You know, I had trouble with this one. I mean, obviously, you know, the massive sex in the biodome.
The penetration.
Yeah, so it was great.
Fine,
But I
Wayne.
honestly think that the phone sex was my favorite because
Oh, that was another good scene.
there's just something so sexy about when a partner just says your name and then it takes you over the edge. Like, I don't know. That's some real chemistry there.
I liked when he was like, grab your dildo.
Also, Deborah doesn't roll off the tongue in a sexy way.
Neither does Whitney.
It sounds sexier than Deborah.
Well, you know,
It sounds younger.
it just sounds like Whitney Houston.
my mom's name was Deborah. No one else my age has my name. I'm not that old. So speaking of being sexy, my spicy scene is, I guess, getting fucked so hard that you literally transcend space and your powers merge. It's kind of cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's never happened to me. So
No, me either.
yeah. So
Maybe one day.
yeah. So I mean, that's pretty cool.
Yeah. So I guess that's pretty cool.
I feel like that's literally the only three spicy scenes in this section.
Yeah, because the blowjob was last
It
last
took
section.
so long to get to the sex in the biodome that I was kind of over it by the time I
I
got
kind
there.
of was the same way. Like, it was sort of anticlimactic, but in a climactic way. Like,
I'm like, your blowjob was sexier.
Yeah.
yeah, I don't know.
I would agree with that,
It
actually.
does. Besides their powers transcending together and them teleporting, it doesn't feel as connected.
Yeah, I think she wanted it to because
Right.
it's clearly she wants us to see it as Bryce bringing Hunt back into himself, and because he's losing it because Bryce was in danger or whatever. But it
feels more practical than it does sensual.
well, there's no build up.
Yeah.
There has been
Oh, there was buildup.
Well, no, but I mean, like, there's been all this buildup, and they're like, oh, these freaking people are in our apartment, and Ethan's there, and we can't do this, and we can't do that. But that all got paused because they were, like, gonna drown or get arrested or whatever you want to call it by the Hind. And so in that moment, there was no more buildup, and it was like, I'm gonna impale
gonna do
myself
it
on
before
your
we die.
cock.
Yeah. I cannot believe that just came out of your mouth.
I mean, I think she says that, doesn't she? Maybe it's maybe it's the
Whitney.
narration.
You nasty.
She took charge. She was on top. I'm just going to throw that out there.
She impelled herself.
She did.
Yeah.
I feel like it
just
actually said those words.
I've never heard you say that phrase before.
We'll get used to it.
I'm here for it. I like it.
Oh, what about your all's chapter MVP?
What was yours, Whit?
I actually said Hunt, and I really just chose him because of his desire to destroy the mech suits to save people. Of just like, this is too powerful. We should not have this. This is not necessary. So many people are going to die for what? And he got rid of it, and I appreciated that.
Yeah.
I liked
job,
it.
Hunt.
Good job, Hunt.
What was yours, man?
Mine actually was the Prime.
Oh.
Because he recognizes that Bryce is loyal and good,
Yeah.
and he tells her that. He also tells her that Danica trusted no one but her. And he answers her questions without hesitation, freely gives information. I don't know. He just seems like at this point in the story, he's the purest creature in these books. Like you mentioned about too, like making Ethan, you know, his be the alpha of his own pack. Like he just has good intentions.
Yeah.
And so in this section, I just felt like he was the one, I don't know, pure soul.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Yeah.
That's a good one.
For
Good
me,
job.
it's the Hind. And for 3 reasons. Number 1, I really love that she gets Ethan all riled up about essentially being into Bryce.
Dude.
Yeah, that was hilarious.
And I think for him, too, it helps him realize it and that maybe he needs to back off a little bit.
Yeah.
Right? Because, I mean, he's being kind of aggressive about it. He keeps kind of cock blocking Hunt, but also being like a little competitive about it.
Yeah.
Right? He's like, well, good luck. You know, Connor had her for 5 years. You've had her for 5 months. We talked about that last
he's
episode.
kind of a dick about it all.
Yeah. Number 2 is that he helps, or I'm sorry, the Hind helps save Hunt and Bryce from Pollux and the Harpy, which I really love that scene you're talking about dropping the stone in. Mm-hmm. And then finally, she tells Rune the folklore story where the first witch is turned into a deer and then a fish and then a monster with claws and fangs and bloodlust. And she talks about how she rips the prince and hounds apart. And I really hope this is her speaking about her future plan to destroy Pollux. I felt like she was trying to tell Rune, like, hey, you remember that thing that happened on the Mind Bridge? Listen to this folklore real quick. And I just think it was really eloquently done and a beautiful story.
Yeah.
So and you start to kind of suspect that she's a good guy at this point.
I wrote down that story feels like something Manon would make up to like her children.
Remind
you know,
me a little bit of who was her second
Asterin.
About her story, right?
Yeah, me
because
too.
she's a witch in the woods, and then her guy waits for her until he dies. It's really a sad story.
Yeah.
That was a part of that series where I really started to fall in love with the witches, because it takes a bit, to be honest.
It does.
So can I talk about my secondary character? Because it's Ethan, since I already talked about him. I really love him because he saves the sprites and Ariadne. I really like that. Mm-hmm. We have already said that he has the capability to be the alpha of a pack, and essentially, I think the Prime is telling him, like, you could get rid of Sabine, dude. Like, here's
without
what you
saying
need to do.
it, yeah.
Right. And I love that the Prime tells him that he senses he has had it in him, but suppressed it so that others could lead.
Yeah.
And I just think it says a lot about Ethan's character, about understanding the pecking order, even though the Prime is telling him, like, fuck that. Like, it's not working.
It's time to step up. Yeah.
Right. And so I just, again, Ethan can be a little irritating at times because he's kind of like a dumb jock, I feel like. But then he just does some really miraculous things. He has really good intentions for everything that he does. So you don't mind that he makes dumb decisions sometimes.
Yeah. That's what I was just thinking. He always is trying his best to do the right thing. And sometimes it goes really great. And sometimes it goes really, really poorly. But he's always coming from a good place.
What about you, Whit?
My favorite secondary character is actually the Star Eater, Apollyon, because I think, I think that he set up Bryce and Hunt to go to the Bone Quarter just to discover what they could do with their powers.
And to discover everything about the Underking.
Well, that too, yeah. But that is a huge revelation for them and really important throughout the rest of this book, that they know that they can do that with their powers. And so, big ups to Apollyon for making that happen. Who was your favorite secondary character, Mindy?
My favorite secondary character is Bryce's nicknames for Hunt's phone.
Oh, I love that.
My favorite so far is Bryce sucks my dick like a champ.
And I love that Isaiah saw it.
I know.
It was like, oh, dang.
That's one of
Congrats.
Well, good for you.
Yeah, that's
one of my favorite parts is all how that's a running joke.
A joke.
Some people in the Bookstagram world talked about how annoying it is, but I feel like it shows how carefree she is and how she brings that out in Hunt. Because he could change it back.
Yeah.
But he loves it. Yeah. And it shows this side of him that you don't get to see because it's so buried under trauma all the time.
Yeah. Well, and he could very easily change because I think it talks about she just watched him put his code in on his phone and he could change
his code.
Yeah. So she wouldn't be able to do that. Yeah. But yeah, I love that running joke too. What about your favorite quote? Deb, you already said yours.
I did.
Light it up.
Mm-hmm.
I have 4. So Bryce, talking to Hunt, says, "You were a kid like 1,000 years ago. Forgive me if my childhood is a little more relevant." And that just made me really laugh. I thought that was funny. And then Hunt says to Bryce, when they're like declaring each other as mates, "Of everything I've ever been called, Quinlan, your mate will be the one I truly cherish." And I just thought that was really sweet. And then these last 2 are about Lydia. "She might appear unarmed and vulnerable, but she carried herself like someone who might whisper a word and have death fly to defend her, who might snap her fingers and unleash hell upon him." That was Hunt thinking that about her. And I feel like that sounds like Nesta. Which I really, really love. And then the agent Daybreak says this to Rune: "To be free of the Asteri, there are things that we all must do that will leave a mark on our souls. It's the cost, so that our children and their children won't ever need to pay it. So they'll know a world of freedom and plenty." The words of a dreamer.
That was mine. One of mine too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that.
That was that was my serious one.
What's your not serious
So
one?
my other one, I had 2 other short ones. One was when Flynn says, "Good thing a dragon owes me a debt."
Yeah.
I really like him.
I do too. He's funny.
And then my sexy one is when it says, "His tongue swept along her in an introductory, 'Hi, nice to fuck you, Flit.'"
That's in the gym, isn't it?
I think it is.
We've all been there. Not that dirty
That's some
gym.
good
but I like the
description there.
Yes, I love that description there. So.
Yeah, I liked it too, Mindy.
But then you realize it's dirty. And not in a good way.
I was going to say dirty in more ways than one.
Do you all feel like you had more questions coming out of this than going into it.
Yes.
Yes.
I do too. Like, I felt like I read this and then was more confused than I was before. Not necessarily in a bad way, where like in book 1 where I was like, what are all these creatures? But just like, well, what about this? What about this? What about this? So I wrote down like my biggest ones, but I still have tons of questions. So my first one was, so we know that Connor remains in the bone quarter and an order was dispatched from the quote unquote dark that he should be left alone for the usual amount of time. But what's the guy that lives down there?
The Underking?
The Underking, yeah. He can't say who gives the order. And I find that super weird. And then Bryce asks if there's any way to help souls like Connor. And the Underking says only the Asteri would know. Mm-hmm. So what's that about? So
I wish I remembered.
So speaking of the Asteri and what's that all about, Therian goes to see the River Queen and tells her about the Underking and the truth about what happens to the dead. He asks the River Queen if she knew it was true, and she doesn't confirm or deny it. But then she does say that they did unspeakable things during the First Wars and then allowed themselves to be under the Asteri rule. So the Ocean Queen remembers a time before the Asteri when leaders were fairly elected, and that is something that she wants to achieve again. So I'm kind of getting some conflicting goals from her in this. So what's that about? And then what did Sofie carve into her upper bicep?
Yeah.
That's
I know.
question.
I didn't even mention that in the recap.
Right.
I'll mention it when we know the answer.
Right. And quite frankly, I don't remember.
I really don't either. Yeah.
So I'm excited. But these 2 other questions are very big, like overarching plot questions that I, hope get answered. Yeah. So.
Yeah. I had kind of like unimportant questions, like detail kind of things.
Mine are kind of that way too.
One was, how does the Hind know that Ethan is into Bryce? How does she know that?
Well, she said she's been watching him.
But like, how? You know what I mean? Like,
her job though is to watch people and know their weaknesses. So
I would like to get details about exactly how she does her like operations, right? Like, is she getting phone records? Is she seeing what they're texting to each other? Like, I want to know more.
I'm
Tell me
picturing like
everything.
binoculars from the building across the street, like Veronica Mars.
I bet that's exactly what she's been doing. And then my other really kind of minor question is just, so Rune is all shook up after he talks to the Hind and the Harpy in the bar, and he is telling Bryce and Hunt about it, and Bryce goes and hugs him. Is that the first time they've hugged since they had their big fight like 10 years before? Did they hug at the end of the book 1?
I think they have before, yeah.
Yeah, I just couldn't remember.
She kind of declares that she forgives him.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just couldn't remember if they actually hugged, because he kind of responded like he didn't remember how to hug her, or was like really surprised that she did. And I was like,
if someone's not sitting on his face, he doesn't know how to show gratification.
Yeah, maybe that's why. And then my last question is, are we ever going to find Emil? Emil, where are you?
Every time you say that name, I think of Night at the Roxbury, where they're like, Emilio!
Mighty Duck Man. What are your questions, Mindy?
Well, tacking on to your Emil question, I would like to know what the hell the River Queen wants with him. Like, I know they talk about like it'll give her power or whatever, but it's very vague and very
suspicious.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I'd like to know what's her deal with that. I'd kind of like to know how Mordok and Sabine ended up together, why they split up, how they became on opposite sides. Like,
sounds like it was a hate fuck to me, to be honest.
That's
what
what
I
I'm
always
wondering.
assumed.
Yeah, I mean, but and then of course it's no wonder Danica was so fucked up because of all that. But
I mean, having a Sabine as a mom on your own, oh my God.
Bad enough.
And
Yeah.
Sabine knew that the Prime wanted Danica to be the leader,
Yeah.
not Sabine. So
Yeah.
that was just a curiosity thing. 2 more. And this is something that goes back to our mate's question. Ethan talks about how he felt a gut tug towards Bryce when he met her. What the hell is that? And then I would like to know who ordered that Connor and the others in the Bone Quarter be left alone.
What are we looking forward to?
Getting all my fucking questions answered.
the same exact thing I was going to say. I have
just-
so many questions, I don't know what to look forward to.
Yeah.
I just said finding Emil. Like,
I don't really care about him.
This kid,
No, at
honest.
this point, I'm like,
this
yeah.
poor kid has caused so many freaking problems for our cast and crew here.
Yes.
Just let's be done with that. We got our answer about Sofie, R.I.P.
Yeah.
But, let's figure this out.
Pour one out for Sofie.
Yeah, pour one out for Sofie. Well, that is it for today's episode. Next week, we are going to be completing our discussion of House of Sky and Breath. We'll be talking about part 3, The Pit, chapters 48 through 78 / the epilogue. We'll see you next time.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Like what you heard in this episode? Follow Our Nerdiest Thing on Instagram at instagram.com/Our Nerdiest Thing or Facebook at facebook.com/Our Nerdiest Thing. We love hearing from fellow nerds. Email us at ournerdiestthing@gmail.com.